Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Almost Dropouts podcast. I'm your host, Daivik, and today I have Jay. You want to introduce yourself, Jay?
Hi guys, so my name is Jay. I'm 15 years old, and like any other 15-year-old, I like to watch Netflix, play games, um, shirk away from homework, obviously. And yeah, I've for the past year, around 16 months, I've been running a company called WhyQ. We are a WhatsApp chatbot working to change the way Indians and people in developing countries interact with Kirana stores. Kirana stores are like your local corner stores, which are independently owned. So yeah, that's a brief about me.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, Jay has really cool experience. I saw that he was a TEDx speaker. So, how about we start there? What led you to becoming like talking on TEDx?
Okay, so I mean, I was looking, I felt like what I have done as a teenager is something, it's not extraordinary, but something which most teenagers should be doing, and it's something which should be more accessible to people, right? Starting a company shouldn't feel
Right.
like it's a hell of a task, something which requires a lot of brain power. It's something which people should love and people should enjoy, right? And speaking at a TED event was something where I actually got the chance to actually reach out to a bunch of kids and a bunch of teenagers and actually like share my story, right? To share where I'm coming from, what I've done, and actually inspire other people to actually go out and make a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's super fair, man. And I think one of the things you talked in there was how Gen Z, decodes entrepreneurship better. And
Hmm.
so alongside that, I think for a lot of people in Gen Z, especially like earlier Gen Z, doing a startup seems very daunting. It seems like you need a lot of experience. But clearly, in your case, like even being so young, you already started doing a startup. So like, what are some practical tips that you have for young people who have an idea but think they don't have enough experience to go about doing it?
Okay, so the first practical tip is to actually go out and validate your idea, because I know a lot of people who had this amazing idea which sounded amazing in their head. But in terms of practicality, since I mean our generation we're new to the workforce, so we're not really that up to date with how we can actually implement something. The first one is to actually validate your
Right.
idea, talk to a bunch of investors, talk to adults, talk to anyone in the industry, and ask them what they think about it. Because if they think that you can actually make an impact, then working and building it up shouldn't be that tough. Secondly, I
Mm-hmm.
would say pick your team wisely. When we started with YQ, we initially had 8 members. We had four guys, four girls. But as time progressed, I think there were some people who weren't able to just contribute enough to the team, and there were some people who didn't associate as closely with the idea as the others. So right now our
Right.
number is reduced down to 4 people. So we've literally lost half of our team, half of our founding team, because we didn't. I mean,
Right.
we weren't really that wise in picking my co-founders. I think another one last thing I would like to
Right.
say is when you're going and building up an idea, it's always best to at every stage, after every feature, after every bug you squash, you should go out and talk to your consumers. You should talk to people, right? And it's a very
Right.
cliche bit of advice, but it's people often mitigate it. People don't really look. People forget to do that. And if you're talking to people, if you're
Right.
constantly interacting with people, that's when you actually realize the pain, right? Because as I mean, I come from
Mm-hmm.
a middle class family, and for me to understand the problem that, let's say, kirana store owners are not being able to earn their bread, it's new to me. It's foreign to me. I haven't really experienced it. I
Right.
haven't struggled to make a living. But the fact is that a person can get so much just by talking, that you often learn a lot of things, and you're just exposed to new perspectives. So I would say that is one of the most
Right.
important things to keep in mind while
Mm-hmm.
working on a startup.
I think one thing that's really unique, especially at your age group, though, is like, you said that you had 8 co-founders when you started the startup, and that's super interesting. Giving like, I didn't think many kids or teenagers at 15 would be very interested in going that route. So, how did you go about finding people who had those like-minded personalities? Because I think for a lot of people that can be a challenge as well.
So we initially met at a business plan competition. It was something organized by the society called the Indus Entrepreneurs. A bunch of basically a bunch of founders, VCs, etc., who just gotten together and they're like, let's teach everyone entrepreneurship. So that's this program for high schoolers.
Okay.
And initially, I was in a room with around 120, 130 people. All of them were my age. All of them had some vague amount of interest in this kind of thing. But what we found was that most of them were doing it either for the college app or to impress their parents for some reason or the other. And when we initially picked out our team, we actually asked them what's your passion, what are you crazy to work for. And
Right.
honestly, I mean, we I think we could have been more selective in terms of picking out our team. Quite a lot of people lost interest and all that stuff. But the thing was that like what drove us as after we won the competition, but we didn't prepare a day for it. We got this idea, and I mean after we saw the like how much impact it can have, the potential in the idea, we got too carried away with actually trying to
Hmm.
make that impact rather than just fantasize and put it all out on paper. So yeah, teenagers, I mean, a lot of
Right.
people are good at this kind of thing because our generation is good at sizing up products to understand markets, and our generation really gets the tech first ideology. But in terms of getting someone who's driven and committed, it's a pretty, I mean, it's something which requires a bit of effort, but it's something which, I mean, everyone
Right.
should do, I guess.
Right. And I think, one thing that really differentiates this generation compared to the previous ones is like you mentioned briefly, the accessibility to all these latest technologies. Like
Mm-hmm.
before, a lot of the like if you wanted to build even software, right, you had to go to university to learn the basics of coding and stuff like that. But now with
Uh
the
huh.
internet, and I sound really old saying this, but it's true. With the internet, everything is available online, and so students or people can get started a lot earlier, and they can actually implement ideas that they have, especially in the software realm. So it's
Definitely.
definitely
So
like a whole different game now.
yeah, so basically working with tech. So our initially we were using multiple no code chatbots and all that stuff to work it out. But in the end, we had to actually code the whole thing from scratch. And me and one of my other co-founders, Discharge, we were the only ones with coding experience. So I mean, one of our other teammates, the guy learned coding in under like 15 days, in under a fortnight. And the
Right.
guy was, I mean, he probably did more, he put more effort into the bot than me and Discharge combined. So learning coding, and I mean, I love, I mean, there's a mindset out there which says that in order to start a tech company, you need to have like a coding experience, right? Which I feel is true to a certain extent, but after a point of time, having an idea and actually building it up, because the more important part of actually working on a startup, and correct me if you feel differently, is actually coming up with the idea, right? Once you come up with the idea
Yeah.
and figure out a plan to execute, executing it isn't that difficult, because coding is a skill which I guess is pretty omnipresent today, right?
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think if you're driven enough for any idea, you'll be able to learn like anything quickly
Mm-hmm.
enough. And so it's just getting that right idea and then being driven enough to actually see that through. I think that's the hardest part. That's where a lot of people fail, right? Where they have an idea, they even come up with a plan, but then the moment they have to execute on the plan, it starts falling apart. And so
Exactly, yeah.
definitely like yeah. Um, but what? I think this is a pretty good segue. I think before we get into uh, the more logistics of your startup and some of this type of stuff, let's talk about the actual startup itself. So,
Okay.
you want to go more in depth about what it does and sort of what was the inspiration of you guys founding it?
Okay. So aside from the very beginning, I'll talk about where actually the whole idea came from, right? So initially we were planning on doing this before the pandemic. But back then
Mm,
we couldn't relate as closely to an idea, so it was just an idea which we were thinking about. We were mulling over this along with a bunch of other ideas, and it was something which is in our head, but we weren't really that driven towards this. But when the pandemic started, we saw
right.
that your grocery companies, your e-commerce companies, you have Amazon, there's a bunch of Indian ones called Big Basket, Swiggy, Zomato, um, uh, Walmart just
Yeah.
recently bought one called Flipkart. So all of these companies were pushing really aggressively
Right.
through digital grocery shopping. And what we found was that
Hmm.
your local corner stores, which are what in India what we call kirana stores, they were struggling to make a living. Right, they were barely being able to uh, make their bread, and for them, I mean, if you look at statistics, they control 98% of the market. So 98% of of India of Indian grocery retail is controlled by them, and yet they're the ones who are struggling to
Right.
make a living. Amazon employees are not. So I mean, that
Right.
kind of struck us, and that struck a chord in us because we felt that we actually had a chance to make an impact. Because quite a lot of companies have tried to digitize these stores, and there are a bunch of problems with that. Number one is they aren't able to reach out quite a lot. We had the same problem. We weren't able to impact quite a lot of people. It was tough to onboard them, and I'll just get to that in a bit. The second thing is
Yeah.
that these kirana stores, the online the other players in the market, they were treating them like a supplier, right? They were saying we'll buy from you and we'll deliver to the people. Where we differ with that is
Right.
we follow the model Uber followed, and one of my co-founders is obsessed with saying this. But we followed like the whole Uberization approach, where what we did was we treated them like a partner. We said that, listen, whatever sales we are making, majority of it is yours. To this date, we haven't made much profits. I mean, we are not making profits. All of our money is either being spent in the tech stack, or we're just giving it on to the kirana stores. So
Right.
that's one thing. So I'll just talk about what it is. So we are a WhatsApp chatbot. Simply put, we joke around a lot about this. We're a WhatsApp phone number. That's all there is to our idea. And we're obsessed with this ideology called Occam's razor, which basically says the simplest solution is most often the best one, right?
Yeah.
So what we did is this WhatsApp number is actually a chatbot, right? You message it, and
Yeah.
it starts to have a conversation with you, right? You talk to it, and you say, okay, listen, I want to go to, let's say, this shop and buy 2 liters of milk and one ice cream brick. And what you're doing is you're paying a monthly revenue, you're paying a monthly subscription to this, right? So, for example, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm coming over to this shop to buy whatever. You're so every at the starting of every month, you're paying around a
Right.
dollar, a US dollar, um, to access the chatbot. And what's going to happen is we're going to pre-collate your order, right? The kirana store will have your order ready before you come. And what that does is that
Right.
instead of waiting 11 minutes at the shop, you're waiting 20 seconds. So there is a
Right. Yeah.
huge difference in the time you're spending. And essentially, what we're doing is we're reducing the chance of catching the virus by 92%. So the 100% of people that would have caught the virus anyway, if they would have stood around, we've reduced that to
Yeah.
92%. We've reduced that by 92%, sorry, to 8%.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the idea in a nutshell. We have three main things we're focusing on. First is the pre-collation of orders, which basically means we get the order ready
Right.
before you come. Second is working with these kirana stores on queue management. We're using so basically, you know how these booking links work, Calendly and all that stuff. Um, there are a
Yeah. Yeah.
few out there which use AI to actually figure out the slots, right? To maximize your productive time and all that stuff. We were using a similar algorithm to minimize
Mhm.
your chances of bumping into another person at the store. And what happened with this was that we
Right.
essentially guaranteed a 5 minute slot or a 3 minute slot where the shop was deserted. And while this, we actually, instead of like reducing sales, we were increasing sales. So we increased sales while reducing the chances of catching virus. So that was the second intent. The third intent
Right.
was to work on inventory management. This is something we're still working on. It's not something which are done with altogether. But what we're trying to do is we're trying
Yeah.
to help digitize the inventory and basically make it into a more automated digitized thing, which basically means that if I message,
Right.
let's say, like the number, I can say that, listen, I want to buy milk. Do you have milk? And so the chatbot can automatically tell me if the shop has milk or if it doesn't. This is kind of tough because the market
Right.
survives off the old-fashioned register. I write my stuff in a register kind of way, but
Yeah.
it's something we're working on. And apart from this, we're also working on basically integrating Paytm, which is like a mobile wallet, right? A UPI. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, to set some context for people who are in North America who might not understand, like, it's not as like in India, like he mentioned, most of these are very small store owners. So digital
Mm-hmm.
transformation for them is not something that's ongoing. Like over here, you'd go to a Walmart, a Target, whatever, right, to get your groceries, and these are huge stores. So so usually like digital transformation is implemented chain wide, but in India and other developing countries, it's more of a small store owner, small businesses at your corner shop where you get your groceries from. There's not really a concept of, there are some super centers like they are here, but it's a very new concept. And so with that, I think what's really impressive here is that you are offering a simple way for them to become digitally transformed, because most people in India have WhatsApp. That's the number one messaging app. Um, and these store owners aren't the type where they're gonna
Yeah,
get like an iPad or completely revamp their whole store digitally, because most of them can't afford
that's
those
correct.
afford that, and most of them don't even understand how that would work. And so I think what's really unique here is that by leveraging WhatsApp, which is something everybody in India understands pretty much, you're able to let them still
Mm-hmm.
digitally transform while not changing their behaviors on a day to day.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of it. We
So
keep it simple, we keep it as accessible to people as possible. We try and make the masses use it. And initially, I mean, the way we went around validating this product is I went to my grandma and I'm like, okay, download this app. I wanted to see how it went, right? I said, download this app and
yeah,
show me if you can manage to make it work. And this was an e-commerce platform app, right? And she struggled with that. I mean, she basically ended up giving up. But then
yeah, yeah,
I told her, okay, here's a WhatsApp number, figure it. I mean, here's a WhatsApp number, message it. She basically asked me to shut up that time. So that's the beauty of it. It's simple, it's accessible, and everyone can use it. So that's where we fit in
right,
as a company, making it more accessible and making it more open.
right, and especially like with such a big push in with PayTM and stuff like that, like you're saying, you're integrating that as well. I think that's another business that's going on there too, right? One is the actual order, like you're sending an order to the store, and then the next is actually payment methods. And India is like heavily going through digital transformation right now. And
Hmm.
so even though Paytm is still up and coming, I think there's going to reach a point where it's like the WhatsApp, where everybody has a mobile wallet with Paytm if they don't already do. I know most, like a lot of the middle class already does, but I don't know if the store. I think the store corner owners are still the store like corner store owners are still getting there, but that's definitely really interesting too.
So basically, the way what Paytm is trying to push is something known as a merchant account, which means that when you register your number, you are basically registering as a merchant, as a seller, instead of as an individual, right?
Right.
Which stands for your like a shop as an identity. But the thing is that that account actually Paytm can basically cut 5% or some amount of transaction fee. I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but what Kirana store
Right.
owners do is they register as an individual, right? So what happens is that isn't really working really well for Paytm. And they're pushing more aggressively. They have the financial backing to actually do that. But what we said was that,
Right.
I mean, for us, integrating WhatsApp chatbots are pretty new, and payment through a chatbot is practically unheard of in this industry. So we,
Right.
for working on an integration, would be is to, I mean, it's something which we're exploring down the line, but it's not something we're actively working on. So what we do right now is we just
Right.
generate a link, right? We say that, okay, here's the shopkeeper standard payment link. Once you go there, you just click on the link and pay the money, right? Which makes your life easier. We don't have to work on the whole integration, on the whole API access and stuff. And it gets the
Right.
job done. Because if you look at it, what initially happened was when the pandemic came out, the first thing the Chinese government did is they took back majority. They actually sanitized the currency notes, right? There was a huge push to make elevator buttons like touch. You can work elevators without touching the buttons and all that stuff. And so we realized
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
okay, guys, no one wants to use cash anymore. Cash is too old fashioned. And so we said that, okay,
Yeah.
UPIs, this is where we need to go. And that's what's actually beneficial, right? So we got the job done. And yeah,
Hmm.
so I think the whole idea of digitization in India is coming. but it's not coming at the
Yeah.
pace where it normally comes in the US or in Canada, right? It's very slow and gradual
100%.
because
Yep.
in US or in Canada, that you just hit a few main hubs, like digital hubs. You hit Silicon Valley and you
Yeah.
hit New York, and it basically spread like wildfire because people are so interconnected. In India, it's tough because even
Yeah.
if you hit the digital hubs, there is quite a lot of India which is untouched by the whole idea and the whole thing. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's funny you mentioned cash there in the middle. I know, like in India, cash is sort of king. Where that's going to be one of the toughest things I think for people to move from owning cash to digital, because a lot of people still are in this mentality that I have the cash in my hand versus it being a number. It is more of a taboo still compared to the West. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they address that.
So right now, what
Um,
we found is, I mean, this is again, I'll speak on in two contexts. Number one is in the rural areas, and number two is in the urban areas. So right now with YQ, we're trying to hit more of tier one, tier two, the metro cities, the main cities. And the thing is, out here, the middle
yeah.
class, almost every second person doesn't carry cash. I mean, according to our own data, 50% of people get out of the house without cash. So just pick up their
Okay.
phone and it's more, I mean, progressive in terms of like in urban areas, but in rural areas that transformation is yet to
Right.
come because number one, mobile phones and digital phones are not as easily they're basically just I mean, like, it hasn't touched the lives of as many people as it has in urban areas. And so
Yeah.
I mean, it's something which is coming. It's definitely on its way, and hopefully soon.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely makes sense. Even in the urban areas, you have so many customers, so it makes sense to focus on them where they have access to a
Yeah.
phone, or most of them have more people have access to phones and stuff like that than rural areas. But all right, I think let me take it back to the startup. So you founded your startup, you came up with this idea. What were some challenges founding it so early on? I mean, as a 15-year-old,
Okay.
or in general too.
So there were, I mean, it was problematic at first because we had school, yeah, so we had school, we had a bunch of other things going on, and all of these projects were pretty time consuming. So there were me and one of my other co-founders. We used to sit down at night at 3 o'clock and start working, and we had a bunch of
Yeah.
late night calls. I mean, like that used to be our thing. And so initially that was a problem. Down the line, investment came out to be a pretty big thing because getting a WhatsApp API directly from WhatsApp was extremely problematic. Because I mean, it's something which costs around uh, a lakh in Indian rupees, which is, I mean, I once again I
Hmm.
need to confirm that, but that's actually quite a lot of money, right? Especially as 15-year
Yeah.
olds, and I mean the eldest guy in our team is 18, so we're all minors legally.
Right.
So that used to be a huge problem. Down the line, we did reach out to quite a few companies. Quite a few of them were really kind and actually offered their services for free. So that was one problem. The second one was actually convincing people that 15-year-olds can actually make a change. Um, Talking to people,
Right.
they were there was a lot of hesitancy. I mean, anyway, if I asked you to start using a new service, you would try and first figure out what it is, right? And when it's coming from a
Yeah.
15-year-old, you start to doubt it more. So that was one huge problem. We did manage to get through that. What the approach we're currently taking in terms of actually getting to people is we're approaching residential colonies, which basically means that um, basically a bunch of colonies, like apartment houses especially, they are
Yeah.
organized in colonies, and each of these colonies has this body called the Residence Welfare what's it called, Residence Welfare Association. They call it RWAs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we went to the whole RWA. We said that okay, here's it's a US dollar per person. Um, you can charge it with the maintenance bill, and everyone gets to use it because our service was pretty effective when there were a large number of people using it, right? We could schedule everyone's time. So that was one
Right.
challenge which we worked on. The second one was, or actually another one was about how we were actually going to approach it from a financial point of view. We had one of my teammates, Sarah. She's basically the whole brain behind this. But the way we went about this was
Hmm.
that we would we had the code running on our own. We initially we were using no code chatbots and all that stuff, but we ended up coding it, and we sourced it through Twilio, the whole API. That was much cheaper than
Right.
I mean what our previous options were. But I mean that's something which we are working on. Another thing which we did in terms of our spendings was that we would actually pay Kirana stores. We would be like, okay, you're hitting XXX easy sales metrics, and we just give them money. So essentially, I
Right.
mean, based on for every 100 rupees we earned, around 70 were going to them, 70, 75. And this actually
Right.
helped us with a lot of just reaching out to people, because if they realized that we were not doing it just to pay for our new, I don't know, Xbox, I think it just made
Yeah.
it more. It actually, I mean, we could get some people could get some reassurance that we're actually out to do good and we're out to touch lives and stuff. Um, so yeah,
Mhm.
those were the problems in a nutshell. They were. It was. I mean, working on an idea at such a young age is always a problem. I mean, it's just something which you need to learn to love, but there are definitely a bunch of headaches which never go away.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something which I enjoy doing thoroughly. But yeah, not without problems, I guess.
Yeah. For sure, man. I mean, every startup's gonna have its own issues,
Hmm.
and it's really interesting to hear the unique ways you guys have challenged the different issues that you guys have had. And I mean, I honestly like I've talked to startup founders before and stuff, and even if you're being 15, I don't hear anything different compared to what I hear from them. So it's not like age is really not a barrier anymore.
So,
I feel
so
like,
I
of
just
course,
want to
it
bring
is
out
to a
a
degree,
small
but
story out here. So we were pitching to
yeah,
a bunch of investors. They were part of a firm, a VC, and we basically didn't tell them we are 14. We're like we're all teenagers, right? We're all between 14 and
yeah,
18. We didn't tell them that. We just went out there and we joined the call. We couldn't go out there, but we joined the call. We gave the whole pitch. They badgered us for a long time, and at the end, before leaving, just before when our fingers were hovering over the end call button, we're like, "Oh, guys, by the way,
yeah.
we're kids." And
Oh,
it was a huge surprise. But I mean, one thing I
yeah,
learned, and I would like to like pass on to anyone else my age who's trying this out: never disclose your age earlier, because I mean, people just tend to underestimate you. And while I do understand that most kids have other commitments, and I mean, a VC can't expect them to be working full time on this. Um, it's something which,
yeah,
I mean, it's something which, if you're actually passionate about an idea, you actually have to basically just try and make it work out, right? And if people like your ideas, they should take that
right,
in an absolute value rather than your age. And there's a saying in the venture capitalism world which says that incubators or VCs don't invest in the idea, they invest in the people, right? And if we are, I mean,
yeah,
if you, after an hour or hour long presentation, if you've deemed that our idea has some merit, then our age shouldn't hold any barrier, right? And I know it sounds like a very it's a new thing,
yeah,
which not a quite a lot of people talk about, but it's something which I feel that every kid should explore into. And honestly, investment
yeah.
is not at all as tough as it seems. I mean, we haven't done much in terms of
Mhm.
investment. It's been a huge major roadblock for us, but after figuring it out how to work the system, it
Yeah.
used to be a really intimidating thing. It no longer is, I guess.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think it's important. I think it's great advice not to disclose your age early on, because I think the moment people will hear your age, their mindset completely changes, right?
Exactly.
They won't necessarily value your idea, or even like the process that you're going of
Hmm.
implementing it. They're just gonna think about like your age, which shouldn't be the barrier, right? As long as your process and your idea is set, and you have a good plan, and it seems like you can carry it through, then that should be the basis of investment,
I'm probably
at
going to
least in
get
my eyes.
atherated by a ton of VCs for this. But one alternative question than asking for personal details like your age and stuff, I think they should ask about how many hours you're actually investing in an idea. Because right now, what we
Right.
were investing in terms of hours, in terms of commitment, was actually probably equal to, if
Yeah.
not more than, what like adult founders were doing. So I think that
Yeah.
that would be a good. I mean, if a VC actually gets impacted by this, that would be great. But I think they should actually just like maybe try and just try and figure out the commitment of a kid for an idea like this or for
Yeah.
whatever they're pitching.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just even understanding the maturity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just because your age doesn't mean you're necessarily like somebody can be 24, 25 years old, but they might not be as mature as a 15 or 16-year-old, right?
Yeah,
So age isn't necessarily like a good indicator for that.
yeah.
And so yeah, definitely, I think that definitely makes sense, man. But we talked about some challenges that you've had. Let's talk about some successes that you've had. So it seems
Okay.
like it's doing well.
I mean, I mean, I'm one of those pessimists who just keeps on. I mean, I'll never be satisfied. I'm one of those guys who just loves to keep on working.
Right.
But I think we've done decently in terms of traction. We have upwards of 125 orders a day. We have around 800
Mm-hmm.
users who are using it pretty frequently. We've helped reduce the chances of getting a virus by 92%. These are all numbers, but if you actually get out and talk to the people, I mean, for me, I would never. I mean, I personally never measure how successful we've been in terms of numbers, right? I feel that's very alien. It's a very alien way of doing it.
Right.
And my CFO Sarah, she shouts at me because she's like one of those analytical persons who just loves her numbers. But the way
Right.
we went about this was we actually went out, and after running it for about a year, we went out and we asked people, okay, what do you think? And that was a success, right? We found that a lot of
Right.
senior adults were using it, senior citizens, senior adults, and a lot of them were actually impacted by it because for them, number one, safety was a huge issue, and I'm basically talking about like getting the virus, which was a huge issue, especially for senior citizens. Um, a lot of working people were
Right.
using it because you basically booked your time in advance, right? It was something which was extremely convenient to do. A lot of people found it really accessible. We and a lot of people just felt that their life was better off, right? We again, I'm one of the techies, so there's this guy
Right.
called Rahul Vora. And basically he's the founder of Superhuman. He got this
Mm-hmm.
idea. He has this ideology called the product market fit, right? It basically means what would the impact be? Again, I've adapted this a bit on my own, but what would the what would the difference be in a person's life? What would the impact be in a person's life after using a product? And what if you took it away tomorrow, right? And we asked this question. We
Right.
actually scheduled calls, and when we asked this question, we're like, okay, how did your life change? And on a scale, we had around 75-ish percent of people, 75 plus percent of people who actually answered that we would be extremely impacted by you just taking away this technology tomorrow. And so I would just like to skip a bit to our
Right.
future plans. I'm sorry, I just had to. But what I want to mention about this
Yeah,
is
no worries.
yeah, what I want to mention about this is that in the future, quite a lot. I mean, we may not, since the new players coming into the market, we have Swiggy, we have Zomato. They're trying to push this way more aggressively than before. With the new Geo, the
Yeah.
Reliance Geo and Facebook deal, which was the whole WhatsApp selling kind of idea. They are going to, I mean, we predict that they're going to be coming on a similar path really soon. And we are actually,
Right.
I mean, I mean, we are basically just trying to keep this up and running for people. So, I mean, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to keep this out there in the open for people to use. And I mean, maybe down the line, I mean, we as founders are hoping that our idea gets copied. I mean, yeah, we're hoping that other people start
Yeah.
approaching this idea because the impact a Reliance or a Dunzo can have with an idea like this is way more than what us 15 to 18-year-old can do, right? And let's be honest, we don't have the
Right.
financial resources, we don't have as much of reach. So, I mean, if someone comes out
Mm-hmm.
and takes our idea, we would be happy.
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of yeah, man. That makes a lot of sense. I think uh I think focusing. I think what you touched upon earlier, focusing not only on the numbers but the human impact is such a big deal because sometimes you can get so caught up that we need to hit this metric, we need to hit this, but like if you slow down, take a second, you're like, what do our users actually think about this? How are we like on a day to day? How are we impacting their lives? I think that can go a long way in making sure your product is still in the right. I think making sure that you still have the right mindset when you're approaching your product.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you get too caught up in the metrics, and I see this a lot, even in Silicon Valley companies, where a lot of companies will get so caught up in the metrics that we need to have these many users doing like we need to get these many KPIs up and running, that they lose sight about the human aspect of their products. They get so caught up in the more artificial aspects. So I think definitely what you mentioned there is such a big thing. And then yeah, second, like the more it's I guess it's sort of noble in a way, but like at the end of the day, you want to see these people, whether it be senior citizens or corner store owners thrive. And so if a big player does come in, it definitely helps them out. But for now, you can be that source for them, to allow them to safely go get groceries,
We're
or
definitely
interact
trying
with
to
their
do that.
customers
Yeah.
digitally. Yeah. So definitely, like I think while there's nobody else on the market, for sure, you guys should keep going. And even when people do come in the market, I mean, it's going to take a while for them. You might expand your business even more. So
Mm-hmm.
who knows what will happen, right? Maybe the big companies will come and maybe acquire you or something like that. But
Fingers crossed. I
but
don't
yeah.
think that's likely to happen, but fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, you never know, right? I guess it just depends on your customers
Mm-hmm.
and what you can offer them. Um, but cool. Yeah, I think in general, like this is pretty good conversation. We've come sort of full circle. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, man.
Sure, man. Definitely. I mean, it's actually an honor. I mean, I know I reached out to you asking if we could do something like that, but it's something which I mean I really enjoyed, and it's kind of an honor coming after a YC founder, these bunch of impressive kids. So, hopefully I
Yeah,
close the
yeah,
thing.
for sure, man. No, for sure, man. It was definitely a really interesting story, interesting conversation. I really enjoyed listening to it, so I hope people listening will also really enjoy it. Uh, but yeah, thank you so much, Jay, for coming on. And uh, till the next one, guys, stay safe and hope everyone is doing okay. Bye.